G'day guys, welcome back to the Life Outside podcast. My name is Cam Bostock, and on this episode I chatted with Robin Boustead and Jeff Ballard, who are spearheading the development and expansion of the 4,500 kilometre long Great Himalaya Trail, or GHT for short. Robin has been trekking in the Himalaya for decades, conceiving a route across the entire range in the early 2000s. Since then, he's hiked and mapped extensively to form a legitimate thru-hike across multiple countries. Jeff thru-hiked the Nepalese GHT in 2024 and has jumped on board to help digitise the trail and provide more information and safety for future trekkers. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Robin, Jeff, welcome to the podcast. How you guys doing?
Good, thanks, man.
Yeah, can't complain.
We even have some blue sky.
Yeah.
That's good. Where are you guys currently located?
Well, we're currently sitting in a small town called Lorach, right on the border of Germany and Switzerland, next to Basel. And It's bizarre that an English Australian and an American should be sitting in southern Germany talking about Nepal. But, there we are.
I love that. And there's an Australian on the other end as well. So we're very multicultural today, but very excited to talk about Nepal and specifically the Great Himalaya Trail, which you guys have a lot to do with. For those who don't know, what is the Great Himalaya Trail? Because it is one of the great long distance trails, thru-hiking trails, which we talk a lot about on the podcast. And I think just not super well known.
Yeah, that's probably because it's a volunteer-based trial. And we don't have government support, but we don't have large organisations trying to, turn it into a name. It's like that because of two reasons. First of all, it goes through a bunch of poor places, which I think a lot of folks are not too excited about. And secondly, it is an international trail. So it's very hard to actually get a lot of support unless you are an in-country trail. So you'll find that most trails around the world that are well known tend to be in-country trails because you can make a lot of a hoopla about them. Whereas with the GHT, we go to some pretty unfashionable places like northern Pakistan and that sort of stuff, which don't really rock a lot of boats for the right reasons. That's the most popular part, I guess, is Nepal because it's the most accessible, and that's where most of the people walk a country section. But it's hard to make a lot of noise about Nepal and have a lot of support to do it.
That makes a lot of sense. Can you give us an overview of the GHT then? Obviously, it goes through multiple countries, very long and, diverse, and goes through places that a lot of people would have never heard of. What's the overview, start to finish and everything in between?
Okay, well, there's the overview of how it was made and there's the overview of what it became.
Yeah, give me what it is now, like what it's become, and then maybe we'll go back and dig into the origins.
4,500 kilometres of trail network if you walked it yourself in a continuous line. In total, We're well over 10K in the number of trails that have been trekked and linked together. And it's designed to provide people with options to design their own adventure. So the Himalaya range is massive, obviously. There's a lot of different opportunities to explore in different ways, at different altitudes, different communities. And rather than prescribing a route, I wanted to provide people with a way of designing what worked for them in sort of that macro space of mountains and the Himalaya and all that it represents.
So today it's from Pakistan through northern India, Nepal, and then all the way to Bhutan. So if you're looking on a map, kind of take a look there, and you'll see the true scale of this.
It squeezes out into Arunachal Pradesh, but we don't talk about that. There's some parts of the GHT which are very much in the public domain, and there's some parts that stay off grid for good reason.
Sure. So does it essentially traverse most of the Himalaya range?
It's the whole Himalaya from Nanga Parbat through to the Tsangpo curve around Namche Bawa, which is the full extent of the Himalaya geographically. And actually, it sneaks over into beyond Nanga Parbat into northern Pakistan and up to the border with Afghanistan. And the idea is that we try and connect to other trails like the Tajikistan Trail and the Trans-Pamir Trail. And there's a lot of other trails out there now. And it's nice to try and connect them together so that people can have a lifetime of wandering around and having a mission to do it.
For sure. I feel like a lot of really long trails that are popping up now are just that. They're connecting all of these maybe smaller routes to these huge continental adventures sometimes. Like I'm thinking about the Trans-Caucasian Trail in Eastern Europe, how it's just sort of connecting to this incredible adventure. And it sounds like the GHT is a bit like that. Has anyone walked the full 4,500 kilometers in one go? Is it even possible to do it within the seasons?
Yeah, okay. You can't do it in one go. I've walked all of it, most of it, multiple times, but it's not possible to do it in one hit. There's winter season really sort of closes trails down. It closes passes. I know it sounds weird, but the Himalayas are like a big banana. Yeah, so it's kind of the western side is a lot more northerly than the eastern side. So you tend to get totally different seasonality as you go through the trail. And you just can't link it up. Even if you ran it, you're still going to get stopped somewhere.
It's also very monsoonal. It's you have multiple things going on. I would say, though, for people like kind of just hearing about it, I think the way I came to the GHT, I think probably the way most people come, is via Nepal. And kind of the Nepal section is very classic, through hike that you can do it in one season. It's nice kind of across one country. And then from there, you kind of get the bug and you come back and you start looking at the rest of the sections.
Mm. Yeah, so long-time listeners of the podcast might have listened to our episode with Jen Gaskell, of which you guys know of. She hiked the Nepalese, I guess, section of the GHT, and just incredible. She had some wild stories of high passes and wild weather and crazy campsites and amazing experiences with local communities, which very much got me intrigued about the GHT, and I've done a bit of research since. So it's just super exciting to chat to you guys about it. It's on my bucket list, maybe linking the whole thing together one day, but at the very least, the Nepalese section just is incredible. In 2023, I did about 30 days in Nepal, just doing, I guess, some of the classic stuff, EBC, and did some mountaineering up Island Peak and Laboshe East, and did the passes and Gokyo Lakes, and it was just incredible. The community, the people, the mountains, just the sheer mind-blowing size of those 8,000ers. It was crazy standing on top of Island Peak, which is about 6,200 meters, and just realizing that Everest was like almost 3 kilometers taller than that. Like, nothing makes you feel so small than being in those mountains and being so high up and still looking up kilometers at other mountains. It's just magical. So I can't even imagine through hiking through that range for months and months and years, if you're going to link it all together over multiple seasons, how incredible that would be. Tell me about where this idea started. I know, Robin, you ventured out and started creating, I guess, this route, and were one of the first to really, I guess, make it a real thing, over a decade ago.
A bit more than a decade ago. For a long, long time, most of the Himalaya was out of bounds for foreigners. So there were, for various reasons, mostly militarily, rationales, that there were places that you just couldn't go as a foreigner. They were out of bounds. And that legacy still sort of haunts the Himalaya in India to some extent, with the inner line areas, where you need to get very special permission from the military to be able to go there. And even then, they can rescind it in a moment's notice and that kind of stuff. But in Nepal, there were 9 areas that were totally sort of no-go zones up until 2002. So even though there had been a lot of people in the previous years do different expeditions, Rosie Swales Pope, Peter Hillary, there's a whole bunch of folks that had done sort of Himalayan traverses one way or another, either on the Tibetan side or using the mid-hills, the lower elevations in Nepal. No one was ever allowed to go to a lot of the higher elevation areas. And that was 9 major sections. So you had Everest and Annapurna and Langtang that everybody knew about, but they represent less than 15% of the Nepal Himalaya. So there was 85% that really didn't get a lot of traffic. You could go to Kanchenjunga, okay, that's another couple of percent. You could go to the Makalu Valley, another couple of percent. But like far west Nepal was, no, you couldn't go to Dolpo. You couldn't go to the far west districts. And that represents more than half of the country. So there was this opening up in 2002, which unfortunately was in the middle of the Maoist conflict in Nepal at the time. And that meant that not only did people not know that these areas were open, but it probably wasn't a good idea to go to them.
Right.
Which is the perfect recipe for me to say, let's go. And so off we trot, and we researched and mapped. That ostensibly, that was my initial motivation, was to go out and check out these new places and map them to see whether they would be good for trekking and what's there. By then, I'd already been trekking in Nepal for over a decade, so it was kind of new for me then anyway. And doing that, I began to think, hey, maybe we could actually, this dream that a lot of us had, sitting around in bars in Kathmandu, drinking beer and saying, oh, wouldn't it be nice if, that you could walk across all the mountains and join them all together. Oh, what a fantasy, yeah. Well, maybe it would be possible. And I started talking about it, and there was a lot of the old guard were absolutely, no way, Jose, that's not possible. I don't know what you're smoking, but it's not good for you. And then I said, okay, well, if everyone's going to be so negative about this idea, let's have a crack at it. So I spent...
Love that.
Yeah, so from 2002 to 2007, I basically was researching these different areas. 2008, I thought, let's have a go. Maybe it will take a few months. I don't know. Because, no one had any concept about what was in these places. Even if you go to them sort of up and down, linking them together is a totally different gig. So I started in, September 2008. And by the time I got to December, I was in the Khumbu. This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And then I came back because the snows closed Tashi Labster. I had to wait for the snow to melt. I came back in February, went back over to Tashi Labster, and then just continued all the way across Nepal. And my intention was to go from Kanchenjunga to Mount Kailash and call it the K to K. That was the original plan. I got all the way to the border with Hilsa, and the Chinese government the previous week had closed the border because some American tourists on Everest, on Choyoyo, in fact, had put up a sign of Free Tibet. And then the Chinese decided they didn't want any more tourists in Tibet. I couldn't go to Kailash, and I still have never been. So that was the end of the K2K. I was disappointed. I was not happy. I went back to Kathmandu and tried to drown my sorrows. But some friends of mine said, you've just done something really remarkable. You should make a book, a picture book, at least, to show what's out there. Okay. So we made a picture book in 6 weeks, from a blank piece of paper to printing the book, launched the book, and then the BBC turned up and a whole bunch of news people. And I'm like, well, what are you doing here? And they said, oh, it's really interesting what you've just done. And I said, okay, I don't think there's anyone out there silly enough to want to do this. And here I am, 16 years later, sitting next to another person who's silly enough to do this. And that's really cool. I think it's a testimony to human nature. I love it.
Very cool. It turns out there's a lot of silly people on planet Earth, and you find something super silly to do, there will be people that flock to it. So good on you for pioneering that. That's incredible. You mentioned the old guard around that time was saying it was impossible or dumb to even try it. What was the reason why? Like, why hadn't it been done before, and why were they saying like you're silly for trying?
I was sitting at a dinner and somebody said to me, if you hadn't have done that, I would have done it. And I said, it's not a case of whether you would have done it. You didn't think it was possible to do it. And that's the difference between me and you. I thought it was possible. I'll have a go. I'll find out. But you are happy to sit here at the dinner and say, if only. I don't live if only. And that's the difference. And I think there were a bunch of people who, were in the Himalaya or involved with the Himalaya at the time, who would love to have done it and subsequently have done some of the sections, but they're constrained by their own imagination or by their own fear or by whatever. I don't know. But we invent barriers in our own lives, and that's not necessary. I believe really fundamentally that every human has got the ability to do absolutely anything they like. They might not be the best in the world at doing it, but you can certainly have a crack at it and give it a go. And I think that's what the GHT does for people. I think it represents a massive challenge that is achievable if you really set your mind to it and plan and go through. You're prepared to go through a bunch of hard days and a bunch of pain and suffering and a lot of sweat and tears, and you'll do it and you'll come back a better person for it.
I think that's the beauty of long distance hiking and trekking in general, is it just proves to people that they're capable of potentially more than they ever thought. And that's what I've experienced over and over again on some of the longer walks that I've done, is just I break through barriers and break through self-doubt and all of these things. And you just end up becoming a more confident, stronger person in all aspects of life. And it's super powerful. And it's very, very easy to sit on the couch and say that's too hard or I couldn't do that. But sometimes, just taking that first step and giving it a crack, like you said, can change the course of your life and others as well, which is just crazy to think about. And, how many people have set out on the GHT in some capacity, since you did back in 2008?
That's an impossible question. I would hazard a guess that maybe 25% of people that kick it off eventually finish it. Right? It's probably 3 to 1, maybe 2 to 1 sort of ratio. There's a lot of folks that have a go and get burnt because they were not prepared enough. They, even within the first 2 or 3 weeks, they're back in Kathmandu licking their wounds, and that really, I think, gives, because people do overestimate themselves somewhat. And if you are a seasoned through hiker, if you're someone that's into long distance walks, well, then that whatever it is you're about to take a bite of is going to take a long time to chew. So I think that's those folks that are into through hiking, they're into long distance stuff. Well, obviously they have a much greater success rate, but still the seasons are against you. The climate is against you. The leeches are against you. You've got sickness, you've got altitude, you've got just a constant list of things that are going to try and undo you every single day. I think more so than pretty well any other trail. That's because of the extreme nature of the environment, and you don't have support networks around you. There's not convenient roadheads and places to stay and supermarkets to buy food and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, 200 people, 100, 200 people or so. So I think, maybe 500 people total of, doing the math there, something like that.
Yeah, so not a whole lot if you compare it to some of the other sort of really popular through hikes around the world, which is exciting. And I guess part of the reason why you guys are sort of bringing the GHT to a whole nother level this year and, over the coming years, which is super exciting. I mean, tell me a bit about how you got involved with the GHT, Jeff, and I guess a bit about what's planned for the trail.
Sure, yeah. So I started kind of like a lot of people on one of the US long trails, PCT, just 2022. And then from there, I did the Transcaucasian Trail, another one of my favorite trails. And similar to the GHT, it is a trail kind of with a mission as well, which kind of, as I've been hiking longer, has started to become a lot more important to me. And that is, Robin mentioned that the different sections of the GHT, the popular sections, Annapurna, Everest region, Kanchenjunga, right? Obviously, lots of people go there, but the sections in between, the sections in the far west, no one goes to. Similarly, for the Transcaucasian Trail, there's sections in Georgia, Mestia to Ushkuli, people might be familiar with that everyone goes, but even just a few valleys away, very few people go. And so the idea is to spread out the impact of tourism, both the good and the bad, to kind of just make things more sustainable. If your whole economy is based on tourism, you've sold your sheep, then there's a crazy thing like pandemic, let's say, it creates a real problem. Whereas if you had a little bit more diversification, you can get some of the positives without as much of the negatives. And so had a fantastic time with the TCT. And then from there, kind of progressing, the PCT, pretty chill, very documented. TCT, a little tougher, a lot less documented. And then the GHT is just kind of one step up from there. So it kind of was a natural progression in that standpoint. So, and, all of those trails are wonderful. They all have positives. And I think that the best possible way to really experience a place. And I think that the GHT is a quintessential version of that. And like you said, this is a perfect time to start being interested in the GHT. There's a lot of really exciting stuff happening. So previously, there's been kind of a network of trails, and there's been kind of a lot of do your own research. That's kind of necessary, really, to bring something into existence. Like if we didn't have Robin, going out there when no one else had done this, there's no way we'd be where we are now. And now that we're here, kind of we're ready to move to the next step, and that is a number of things. So one of them is new routes. So previously there was that kind of a low route and a high route, and the low route has kind of due to development turned to a lot of roads. And so really now most people kind of hike this high route. And now we're kind of moving into the high route, which is actually now more achievable for more people because there's more tea houses. That development that we talked about is actually happening, which is awesome. And also a lot of the passes are a lot more documented, so more people can handle them. And so that route is kind of ready for prime time. And so we're going to do a lot of work to digitize that, to make an app similar to Far Out, for example. US thru-hikers are familiar with that. So you have waypoints, you have the information, you're able to comment and see if this water source is dry, if this river is passable, and that sort of thing. And then in addition to that, to get more people involved and to kind of keep the extreme nature of the GHT, there's going to be a new alpine route that'll be even higher, even more technical, really pushing boundaries. And then there's also going to be mountain biking route and a more running specific route for the GHT. So we're all really excited about that. And then on top of that, we're kind of really trying to foster the community aspect, following the lines of the Transcaucasian Trail, the Hexatrek, and have a kind of an online community for people to share information. So new routes, new digitization, new online community, lots of really, really cool stuff. Did I hit everything, Robin? I think...
And the tea houses.
And the tea houses. Yeah, sorry. The most important part. We'll let Robin talk about the tea houses.
I mean, you can't do a long distance walk without support. Mm-hmm. And it's the folks that live in the hills are the ones that ostensibly are there on the spot to provide that support. So we've started working with communities to create check-in points across Nepal. This year we'll have 100 check-in points in different communities.
Wow.
Where you can buy fuel and you can get DHI food, and you'll be able to register and get weather updates from the locals, and the locals will be ready and waiting for you. They haven't disappeared up into the hills for a week when you turn up and there's no one there. So I'm still very much a person who's deeply thankful to the communities of the Himalaya, because I'd never have done this thing without them, and no GHT would have done it. And even though people want to go solo and live off the land, it's not true. You do have to rely on the people who are there in some way, shape, or form, and without them, there would be no trail. In fact, so I think we need to try and work out the best way to make it as good as possible for the people who. Let's face it, I don't see a lot of folks in Australia or myself come to that or anywhere else volunteering to go and live their whole lives in a marginal mountain community. It's tough, really tough to live up there. So we need to try and find ways to help them make it easier, but also to help the trekkers make it more achievable. So that kind of is a good thing to bring them together. And that's what the win-win.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the other big kind of theme, I think, for these updates is increasing safety. So getting more information out there reliably, and then also having this network out there in the field of people that understand what you're doing. Yes, you really are walking across Nepal. They get it. They kind of know where the route is. I mean, I remember on my hike several times, people were saying, no, you're convinced you're going the wrong way. All of the tourists go this way. And you have to explain, no,
Right.
I'm going this way. It's okay. And then just like Robin said, I mean, a lot of these places, they're not going to have camping gas, right? They're not going to have the kind of food you want to. In the far west, I ate nothing but ramen noodles and like crackers, biscuits for, like 2 weeks straight. And, as a thru hiker, that's like, you can deal with that. But I think a lot of people would struggle a little bit more. And so having those kind of hiker, knowing what hikers want is a big deal. And then, like Robin said, a lot of these places, really, even 20 or 30 hikers coming through a year is a meaningful economic benefit to them. Really does matter in these communities, especially in the West, especially in these kind of in between places. It's a big deal, and I think as a hiker, being able to kind of contribute and support that really brings a lot of meaning to what we're doing. I think a lot of people kind of talk about, the kind of post-trail depression, or they really want to get to the next hike and the next one just isn't quite as good as their first one. And I think, like, for me personally, that's been the key factor, that kind of hiking with a purpose, trying to figure out how to contribute to give back, whether it's trail work, whether it's mapping, whether it's volunteering, whatever. I think really kind of brings everything together in such a beautiful way.
Incredible. I mean, that all sounds unreal. You guys have explained that very well. And obviously an incredible amount of work over the decades and definitely more recently to digitize everything has gone into this. So credit to you guys. I mean, I'm excited, very excited to head out onto this new trekking route with all of these advancements. It just seems a lot more accessible as someone who hasn't done extensive, stuff in Nepal outside of the popular areas and stuff. And so it's just not as daunting, which is really, really, really cool. Jeff, you mentioned, there's both positives and negatives to tourism, and that's certainly true all over the world, specifically in Nepal and in the Himalaya and a lot of these smaller villages up in the mountains. What does that look like, both the positive and the negative side?
So I'll just say something, but Robin's really the expert here. His day job is working with countries and communities on kind of sustainable outdoor tourism, and really this is turn. I guess maybe I don't even know the background, but I guess the GHT almost kind of informed your whole career path in some way. But I think. You can see it when you walk in these small villages, and the difference, the way you can really see the impact you're having in the smaller communities versus in the bigger areas. But I'll let Robin talk about
it. Yeah, okay. It's not rocket science. This is you're a guest in someone's home. They are hosting you, and just as you would like to be treated if you went to go and stay with some friends somewhere, or if you were looking after some friends come to stay with you in your own home. Well, that's the premise of the relationship. That's where we start from. If you can think of the basic adage, treat other people in the way you'd like to be treated yourself, well, then you have the foundation for thinking sustainably. And I think that's really what's the most exciting and rewarding thing about a long-distance trail, is that the people that go and do it are really looking for an immersive experience. That they want to lose themselves in this trail, in this thing. Yeah, they want to lose themselves, and then they want to come out of it almost like the phoenix from the ashes as a renewed self. Okay, well, now we have a transformative process going on with this really sort of sustainable foundation. And that, to me, is the architecture of what trail design should be. It's how trails should be managed. So there should be a very strong community component. There should be a very strong community engagement, even community ownership, which is what the check-in points are all about. And there should be a really highly informed group of people who are the guests, who are turning up, aware of customs, aware of traditions. What are the do's and don'ts? Do they have the right skills and ability to be able to sort of not cause offense, even unwittingly in some way? And how can they all work together to be able to do things like protect the environment and reduce trash and make sure that we're not really trashing the stuff that we love so much? And that's not happening in adventure tourism. Yeah, that whole, what I've just described doesn't exist. And the GHT is a real world effort to make that happen. And we go through, when you're walking along the trail, you go through places like the Everest region, okay? The Everest region is spectacular mountains. It's a beautiful, beautiful area, but it has been trashed, and it is getting trashed daily. There are over 70 open rubbish pits where the locals are just slow burning rubbish in off-season, and it's just putting all that the toxins and everything into the soil. Every single water source in the Everest region is now contaminated with human feces because of open defecation from porters, okay? Mostly. So, yeah, there are places that we love to death. And the mountains are very much sort of a fragile, highly sensitive ecosystem that if you have thousands of people rocking up and just doing whatever they like, well, you have a big problem. And I mean, I remember on a trek that I was leading, there was a girl, she loved Snickers bars, and she would eat 2 or 3 Snickers bars every day. And I collected the wrappers, and after 2 weeks, she had like 30 Snickers bars, wrappers. And I put them on the table, and I said, now, what are you going to do with that? We're up in the mountains, here's 30 Snickers wrappers on the table. And she looked horrified at the rubbish. And I said, so are you taking it home? You know, because these folks, they don't know what they're going to do with it. And I don't think people really think things through in life, but especially not in tourism, where there is this entitlement, there's this belief that because you're a tourist, you're doing someone some good by turning up. Well, actually, I don't believe that. I've seen a lot of tourists turn up in places and not do good. And I look at the impact on places like the Everest region, which is, you know, it's an area of outstanding natural beauty. It is quite rightly preserved in a UNESCO Natural Heritage List, but we are trashing it like it's going out of fashion.
The one good example that I want to kind of share is of a positive example here is, I don't know, when you went to the Everest region, there's 2 ways to get there, right? You can fly to Lukla, or you can do it the right way and walk from Jiri. And if anyone's planning to go to the Everest region, walk from Jiri, it's amazing. I mean, this used to be the way, right? When Edmund Hillary climbed Everest, she walked in from Jiri, right? He certainly didn't fly into Lukla. So I think that area has a long history, and recently they started building roads, which is a controversial topic amongst hikers in the Himalaya, because hikers don't want roads; they want their trails. But the reality is, like, the people in those villages along that route before the road, they had to walk 3, 4, 5 days to get any kind of medical care. The people there really do benefit from the roads, but it has a negative impact potentially on tourism. So the guest houses along that route, when the roads were built, really struggled. And so that was kind of how things were kind of right before COVID. And during COVID, I guess the local government there realized this. They got together with the guest houses, and they built an entirely new trail system parallel to the road system. Beautiful trail, amazing, that now you can have a wonderful experience trekking through from Jiri over, PK Peak, which you can see the whole Himalaya. It's awesome. All the way down then to Lukla. And that, to me, is the best of both worlds, right? You have the local people that are getting the development that they need. You have the trail system that's able to give them that tourism income. The tourists are happy. But yeah, it's tough. Like Robin said, I mean, we have these places that are amazing. The other one that comes to mind is Upper Dolpo. Really special area. If 20,000 people a week or whatever go through Annapurna, or what is it, 500 people a day or something like that. It's like 500 people a year go through Upper Dolpo. And it's a very special place, but there's no one there to pick up the trash after you. So, if people are there disposing of things inappropriately, it's going to be very evident very quickly. And so that's actually one of the best parts about the check-in point program, because as part of the program, we're also going to be doing trainings for the people to talk about things like, getting rid of waste properly, hygiene when you're cooking for everyone, other sustainable topics as well. So it's kind of a holistic approach, which is great.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, when I was in the Everest region, which I did fly into Lukla. Next time I won't, I promise. We saw it all, and we heard it all about all the trash and a lot of the sort of the negative impacts of tourism, and it was tough to see a lot of times, and there was a lot of people there, doing good work to hopefully curb those issues. But I guess with the GHT and coming into all of these newer places that don't get as much traffic, you have to kind of get ahead of the issue, I guess, don't you? And have this in the plan to manage the tourism sustainably and the increased numbers. Do you guys anticipate the trail to increase in popularity significantly once all this digitization happens and the new routes are launched and it becomes safer and more accessible?
What's significant? Yeah. I don't think it's going to be
several new hikers here.
Yeah, I mean, if at the moment, if we have between 30 and 50 people on the GHT through the year, that's where we currently are. If that doubled, that's totally sustainable. That's something that the communities can cope with. If it went up to 500, then that would be a serious problem.
Okay.
So we don't want to see the numbers of people doing the GHT as climb Everest, for example. Absolutely not.
And the good thing is, I mean, I personally, the way I planned my hike, I did it in a way to kind of minimize all of the difficult things as much as possible in terms of, acclimatization, in terms of the weather, all these things. But there's nothing you can do about the elevation change. Doesn't matter. And so there's just a natural limiting factor, just to like put things in perspective. So the PCT, it's like, 4,000 kilometers, 150,000 meters of elevation gain. GHT is similar amount of elevation gain, but in a third of the distance. And so every, hill,
crazy.
You're going on the PCT is a 30% climb on the GHT. It's brutal. It's super steep. Just the verticality, if you haven't been to Nepal before, is amazing. I mean, just to be in some of these valleys and look up and look down and realize you're looking at 10,000 plus feet of change right in front of you is amazing. I mean, I remember looking after I came back, looking at some pictures of the Sierra and being like, well, it's kind of flat.
There's always a bigger fish. There's always a bigger mountain range.
Yeah.
Until you get to the Himalaya. Yeah, that's crazy numbers. So like the average through hiker on the GHT is doing, I'm assuming, a lot less distance compared to something like the PCT on the average day. One, because you're at altitude and things are just harder, and two, because the vertical change is 3, 4, 5 times as much.
I mean, you're limited by the gain, not the distance. I mean, I think that's probably most people's experience.
This episode of the Life Outside podcast is proudly brought to you by OptiVenture, the world's first all-in-one supplement specifically designed for outdoor adventurers. It's been my favorite health, performance, and recovery tool for the last couple of years, both in training and while on trail. It's super simple. Just take 3 sunrise capsules each morning for sustained energy and to help optimize gut health, immunity, and mental clarity, and then take 3 sunset capsules at night to help sleep more deeply, recover more efficiently, and keep inflammation low. I've used it on long trails like the Pacific Crest, as well as on my Bibbulmun track, fastest known time completion. And I also just use it in my daily life as it replaces more than 10 individual supplements. It's simple, comprehensive, and built for my adventurous lifestyle. If you want the easiest, most effective way to stay healthy, perform well, and recover faster both on and off the trail, I can't recommend it enough. Head to optiventure.co and use Life Outside for 10% off your order. All right, let's get back into today's episode. So what are the highest altitudes that you reach along the GHT? I know you go over a lot of high passes. What are sort of the highest points you get to?
Partly Col and West Col in the Makalu region are the highest passes. There's 6,180, 6,190.
Wow.
And there's a lot of, I can't remember now, so I think 17 passes over 5,000 meters.
It depends what route you go to, but it's just so many. You do that, like, for instance, people do the 3-pass loop in Everest. And it's tough to be at elevation for that long is tough. there's a section of the GHT through Upper Dolpo where I was not below 14,000 feet, so a little over 4,000 meters, other than one day for like a month and a half. So
you're up there. And the Alpine route, now we're talking, it goes higher and harder.
You get acclimated, but like above 4,000 something meters, you still feel it a lot. It's still tough. Every pass is tough.
So you're over 4,000 meters for a month and a half. I think on the PCT, I was over 4,000 meters. Well, you would have been too for what, one day or a part of one day or maybe two. It's a different ball game entirely, but sounds like an incredible challenge. And I mean, I just think back to being in the Everest region and watching some of our Sherpa guides and some of the Sherpas that were out there mountaineering and how acclimated they are. Just blew my mind. So I'm assuming you'd get relatively acclimated over months at altitude, and your fitness.
I think after about 3 weeks, you grow wings.
Yeah.
Because then when you come down into altitude again, and it's whoa.
Yeah.
My resting heart rate when I came back to Kathmandu in the middle was like 35 or something. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and you do so like you the volume of red blood cells increases slowly, and you get to a point like after about a month or a half when that kind of stabilizes. But you're not. It's not like you're at normal elevation. Like you still feel it on every pass. It's just like you can take fewer breaks. It's still tough.
So you guys mentioned you have these 100 checkpoints planned for this year with tea houses and locals. You said at the beginning, Robin, that for an international trail that spans multiple countries, it's very hard to get governmental support. How about the Nepalese government, specifically with the Nepalese section of the GHT, and being in close contact and working closely with the locals and the communities? Are you working with the government, or is it just like on a tea house to you guys basis? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, with the check-in points, it's tea house to tea house. And that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, we're dealing with owner-operators. Yeah, these are individuals who live in a remote community, and maybe they don't have the greatest level of trust for the government. Maybe they don't have the greatest level of trust for politicians. And it's the tour operators themselves who are the ones that they're regularly in contact with and talking to, and they develop a good rapport. So we asked we have a few tour operators that we sort of not endorse, but we work with to be able to identify the tea houses and to then negotiate directly with them so that the tea house understands precisely what's expected at a local level. This isn't a foreigner coming along and saying, hey, look, we've got this great idea. Would you like to come and be part of the party? No, this is very much a locally driven, local commitment level that the operators themselves have to guarantee a traffic flow to that tea house. And they need to be in contact with them to say, okay, this year maybe we will send you 5 people, or maybe we'll send you 20 people, whatever it is. But that's between them, and they need to be adding value to each other within Nepal. Nepal is an interesting country because it used to be the darling of the development world. And just about every country in the world was pumping money into Nepal for various development projects. And it's received billions of dollars over the years. And still, there hasn't been the development in the country that you would perhaps expect to see for a whole range of different reasons. So working with the government, yes, in principle, I do work with the government. I certainly inform the Nepal Tourism Board about what we're doing and how we're doing it. The CEO is a good personal friend of mine. So it's not as if after spending 16 years of living in Nepal and working with the government on various projects that I don't sort of include them, not at all. But there's a limited benefit to the locals and how much trust that's going to build between the GHT and the locals. And they don't have any money. The government of Nepal spends most of its time being nearly broke. And the last thing I want to do is turn around and say, can you give us some money to make some trekking trails in the mountains for tourists, as opposed to, paying for hospitals or teachers in schools, that kind of stuff. So I think really on principle, I have a big problem with asking for money that could be directed to more important causes. Tourism, yes, brings economic benefit, but I think a lot of the GHTers, they're going to go there anyway. And what we want to do is try and make it as accessible for them and as safe as possible for them, but by bringing people together to work together to make it happen rather than donor funds. I hope that answers your question without being negative about Nepal and money and stuff.
No, absolutely. No, that's great. For people who are very interested now after hearing you guys talk about the GHT, what is the process? Is there a permitting system? Is there costs associated, or is it just like you download the app that's coming and you go walk? What's that look like?
Things are in flux right now. So previously, it used to be very much I spent a year doing research for the GHT, talking to multiple past hikers, kind of consolidating a bunch of information together, which was awesome. I really enjoyed it, and also important to really kind of understand things, understand what you're getting into, but also that's also limiting. Not everyone can do that, and also potentially it attracts people that kind of go in with not enough preparation. And so we are shifting to make things a little bit more accessible and safer. And so step one would be, there's a new GHT website just updated. Get on the mailing list, and that's where we'll kind of be announcing things. But what we'll hopefully do is be able to publish kind of the basic routes to kind of get people kind of understanding what the options are so they can choose their specific hike, because you have to decide, what season are you going in? There's kind of two main seasons, pre and post monsoon, on either side of winter. And then also what direction, what do you want to do the high passes? For instance, when I went to do the 3 passes in Nepal, I deliberately also did the approaches for the technical passes on either side of the Everest Valley. I don't have a mountaineering background, so I kind of wanted to see what those would take. And I decided I probably didn't want to, start practicing mountaineering for the first time at 5-6 years. And so I did a version of the high route that just diverted around those several technical passes. About 4 or 5 of the 15, 16 passes are considered technical, where you might need mountaineering equipment. And so making those decisions, looking at that information would be a good place to start. And all of that is really nicely put together on the website. Yes, we'll get the app rolling, we'll get the community rolling, so you can kind of discuss all of these things with the community. But for now, I would say, sign up for the newsletter. We'll start rolling some of this stuff out. And hopefully, I'm excited to start that community. It's been a great experience on the Transcaucasian Trail. They have like a Slack platform that is really active and kind of goes back to that, why do we all like through hiking? For most people, or I don't know, everyone's here for a different reason. I think for a lot of people, me included, it's the community, it's the people. And I think having that kind of online space is really great for that.
Yeah, awesome. It's so true. I mean, a lot of my thru-hike, I'm a pretty big introverted person. I love soil hiking, and I've gone into most of my long trails thinking like, this is going to be an adventure for me. I'm going to challenge. And then I always just end up with a group, and just the best part of the experience is always the people I'm with or the communities I walk through. And I've slowly learned that is my biggest love. It's actually just experiencing the generosity of strangers and the friendships you can make doing hard things together over a long period of time. And so that's super exciting that you guys have got all that in the works. You said the season to hike is either side of winter, the monsoon season. What exactly are the months for that?
Well, actually, we've actually had our first monsoon trekkers go through last year, and there are winter trekkers as well, because it depends on your route. As a trail network, you can choose how high you want to go at different times of year. Now, in the monsoon, there's a lot of leeches around, certainly your lower elevations, so you might want to go higher.
Lovely.
And in the winter, there's a lot of snow, so you might want to go lower. But there's two major windows, which is spring and autumn, and they offer the most stable weather conditions. although climate change is doing its best to try and make that complicated as well. So a lot of hikers start March and finish beginning of June. And the other window is sort of start beginning of October and finish January. And they are two sort of fairly reliable, certainly the autumn weather window. Okay, it's colder, but it's a lot clearer. And if you're into taking photos of mountains, then that's certainly the best window. If you're into flowers and cultural traditions, then probably the spring window is going to be more interesting for you. And of course, monsoon being the main growing season through the mountains is when a lot of festivals are happening. So if you're much more into the community stuff and village life, then you're probably going to kick off sort of April, May and go through till September. Okay, it means you're going to get some wet stuff. But it's not always wet. The monsoon isn't continual rain all day long, every day. It's a few hours most days, and then you get actually clear days, and the mountains come out and everything looks beautiful with the flowers and all that kind of jazz. So, there's no hard and fast rule anymore. And as I say, climate change is doing its best to make all of that a lot more unpredictable, I guess.
Sure. I feel like a lot of people would prefer to be in like a blizzard at the top of a 7,000 meter peak than deal with leeches. So it's interesting. You've got an interesting trade off there. I've hiked a few times with leeches and leech infestations, and there's a lot I'd rather do besides that. That's super cool.
I had one leech on my GHT, and my hiking partner had another one that really randomly, like in the middle of November when they shouldn't be around. But just took off her sock and it was just full of blood. And it's like, did I step on something? What is this?
When I kicked off the GHT in Kanchenjunga, I was with an American buddy of mine, and we actually started on the 4th of September, which is full-on monsoon time. And in Kanch, which is already notorious for leeches, it was a particularly heavy monsoon year, 2008, and there was a lot of leeches. I know, a lot. So every 15, 20 minutes, you're stopping and taking a dozen off of each other. And you get into the campsite in the evening, because no tea houses then, we'd have to try and somehow put a camp together. We would light a wet wood fire, just whatever we could gather, to create a really smoky fire inside some sort of under a tarp, strip naked and pick the leeches off of each other. It's a bonding experience that will last with you for
which is probably good for your cough at altitude as well, right?
Yeah.
But for anyone not feeling the leeches, you can absolutely hike in seasons and places. Like I said, I had one leech, so it's whatever adventure you want to have.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there is a bit of flexibility there, which is really cool. I'm always interested, like Robin, you've been trekking in Nepal, you said, for a very long time. I'm interested in comparing experiences from decades past to more modern hiking experiences, because like I couldn't imagine, you mentioned Jeff Far Out, I couldn't imagine through hiking without Far Out or something similar these days, because I've never known anything else. But 10, 20, 30 years ago, especially in places like the Himalaya, there's not going to be as much information that there is accessible now, as much readily available knowledge and all this kind of stuff. What was it like 25 years ago, Robin, in the Himalaya, trekking to these remote regions compared to what we can do today?
Very little in comparison. There were no maps except for the three main trails. The Austrian Mountaineering Association had produced the Schneider map series of Everest, Langtang, and Annapurna. So this tiny sort of little bit of the Nepal Himalaya. There was no other information beyond that, and it was just my curiosity wanting to map areas. Like even the Nafu Valley north of the Annapurna was not on the map until 2004 when I went and surveyed it, and we then had a map. So the whole GHT was created pretty well without any accurate maps, because the Schneider maps date from the mid-1970s and their trails and the communities were not correct. So we were trekking blind for years, and that was big part of the fun, to be perfectly honest. I spent a few years when I first started coming to Nepal, sort of learning the ropes, what it's like on trails. And then I would go down to the Bardia National Park, the jungles in far west Nepal. And I had a friend down there who worked for the national parks. He actually was the guy who decided the boundary of the park. And he taught me how to track animals. And, okay, we're tracking rhinos and that kind of stuff. But the principles served me well in the high mountains because you can see where the yaks walk in their summer pastures. And if you can actually assess how many yaks and, are they going up or down and when was the last time they went? If you can actually read the yak trails, then you have a really good idea of where are likely to be passes because none of this stuff was on the map. So the trails were wrong, the villages were all wrong, everything. So it was really a journey of discovery in many ways. And for many years at the beginning of the GHT, I really wanted to have people have that sense of exploration as well. So I was deliberately vague and minimalist about information. I deliberately didn't share stuff because I thought, well, if you're crazy enough to go and do this, then perhaps you're crazy enough to go and develop the field skills and everything else required to take on Himalayan exploration. And I began to realize with the number of sort of complaints I was getting from people that perhaps wasn't such a good idea and I should open up a bit more. And that's when the guidebook came and we started getting really serious about producing the topographic map series and that kind of stuff.
Just two things. One is in terms of things you can do ahead of time. Robin's book is fantastic. Even if I'm not the kind of person that would buy a guidebook for a trail in general, but I did in this case because it was the only option, and I'm really glad that I did. It has a bunch of stories about the cultures you'll walk through. It's really good stuff. I did rip it in 3 places so I could carry it across the trail without carrying too much. But I bought a second one. And then the second thing is the thing that's really exciting, I think, about this next phase in the GHT is, yes, we're making the kind of the classic high route more accessible. So it's going a little bit away from that, insane adventure aspect. But for people that are looking for something really boundary pushing, that alpine route, it is not going to be on far out. Absolutely not. The thought there is to make sort of like if people are familiar with like an Andrew Skirka or Adventure Allen high route, or the kind of documentation that comes with that, not a GPS track. Maybe you'll get some points. You'll get a written description. You'll get very clear descriptions of like what kind of terrain you'll be moving in, what kind of skills you need, who it's right for, all those kinds of things. But it very much will be a true adventure, with enough backstop to know it's possible, to know people have done it. And then, of course, people talking about it in the community, whatnot. But that's the idea, to kind of keep that, really adventurous side alive while also making the rest of the GHT more accessible for everybody. So I'm personally excited to go do that.
Yeah, cool. See, it sounds like there'll be basically a route for anyone, whether you're just like a thru-hiker who wants, probably more like me, who wants something to follow and something pretty clear, or you want a bit more of adventure and a bit more technical challenge. And then you've got the ride and the run as well, right? Which is super cool as well. I guess people have less time
across the GHT on the high route, but that's not a normal thing.
Yeah, the Nepali guy, Mangal, I love him. The guy's mad. I love him to bits. Mangal Lama, actually, he rode the high route of the GHT.
A lot of carrying and pushing, I'm sure.
70% was a carry.
Yeah.
When he got back, I said, so how much did you ride? And he said, you were right. It wasn't very much.
So that's probably why you've created the mountain biking route for this
which is now why we're having a mountain biking route. And also with the running route, this is about providing people with an opportunity to establish FKTs.
Yep.
This is something that's a big thing in the running community. There's been some major meltdowns over the years between runners and FKT claims. So we're going to establish a standardized running route, which will be a mix of road and trail. And there will be some wild stuff in there as well, just to keep that whole spirit of the GHT sort of in there. But it will be set pretty well in stone for sort of the next 20 years. So people can have FKTs, and they can do sections and FKT sections. So that. I think that will be a cool thing as well. And this is all a blueprint in Nepal for then expanding that into India. And Bhutan, and there's a lot of stuff. So if you want to come and play with the GHT, be prepared. It's going to keep you occupied for quite a while.
That sounds like a rabbit hole. You could probably commit a lifetime to exploring the route and attached routes and different ways of riding alpine. Super cool. I'm interested. Like, it sounds like, Jeff, you went fairly ultralight if you're ripping books into 3. Like, comparing your gear, Jeff, on your through of the GHT to Robin, your gear 20 years ago, I'm sure there's some differences there in weight and different types.
I was lucky that when I was young, I studied pure chemistry and maths, and decided I didn't want to do that for a profession, so I went into travel. I wanted to travel and turn that into some form of an earner. So I worked in the outdoor industry in Australia, and started an outdoor shop in Sydney, and that grew, and it was all very cool. And it meant I had my finger on the pulse of outdoor gear for many, many years, and got involved with designing gear and that kind of stuff as well, which was cool. I think the principles of Superlight were around, if perhaps not fully articulated, but they were in principle there when I think I did my GHT for the first time. And over the years of trekking back and forth and researching new routes, gear wears out. And I was always a massive fan of Arc'teryx because of the warranty that you got with it, but now they've scrapped that. They're out the door. We're going back to cheaper gear that can be replaced more frequently. So I'm kind of, I see the conversations that people have in the GHT community about equipment. There's not that much that has actually changed. You can't change a tent structure that much. It's the biggest thing I had was we had to be fully self-contained for a week or 10 days at a time because we had no idea what was out there.
Mm-hmm. And that's the another big thing of digitization. I mean, just mapping where the places you can get food are is a big deal. As I've done a little bit of scouting on the Transcaucasian Trail, and like just carrying a ton of water because you have no idea where the next water source is, and then realizing it's like 2 miles away is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Which some people really enjoy. Some people it's kind of a pain. So that's making it a lot more accessible. Meaning, like I carried more food on the GHC than I needed to. When I hiked it, there was less information available. As I went through, I mapped a lot of these things. So now that information is available, and now future hikers can really dial it in. I'll give you one piece of equipment that I bet you didn't have, Robin. So when I hiked, it was kind of right as those sleeping pad inflators, the ultralight ones were coming out. And so the first one, Tyler Rex Creations, had the little 3D printed, weighs the same as the stuff sack of your sleeping pad. And I'll tell you what, when you're at, 17,000 feet, not having to inflate your sleeping bag, like wheezing into it and trying not to pass out is the best ounce money can buy.
Oh, I don't know.
10 grams or whatever.
I like the buzz. Bring on the buzz.
I get lightheaded trying to blow up my mat as it is, let alone at 17,000 feet. That is the best use case for those little electric inflators.
I love my beauty sleep. I've been using X-Bed down mats for years, and I'd sacrifice just about anything else than a down mat, especially when you're sleeping on, moraine. And moraine is not comfy. Lightweight mats are fantastic on flat ground, but
hey, if it works, it works. That's really cool. How can people support what you guys are doing with the GHT and everything that is in the plans for the coming years?
Well, the first thing is go walk it. That's because the GHT doesn't exist without trekkers. And that, I think, is true for most trails. We don't want to see trails die. We want to see them healthy. And what makes them healthy is trekkers.
Yep.
Then get involved with the community. There's the website is there. Jeff's doing some fantastic work on building the digital space for our people to be able to meet and connect. We have a crowdfunding kicking off not next week, on the 24th of February, which hopefully people can jump on. And that's to help with the trail digitization and with the training the community homestay, the check-in points. The check-in point folks, they don't come to Kathmandu very much or Pokhara very much, so we need to sort of entice them a little bit to bring them down from the hills. So we offer them a free lunch and that kind of stuff. So that's they need the materials as well. We give them some posters about sustainability in Nepali and in English. And that's something that, in terms of resources, we want them to be sort of skilled up and feeling like they have something that they can become knowledge bearers when they go back to their own communities. So, if people want to get involved, there's buying the products, the maps helps. All of that money just gets plowed straight back into all of the work that we do.
There'll be some nice merch coming, so get some. I have a custom made on the streets of Nepal hat, but we're going to get some official.
Very
ones.
cool.
I think the community is the biggest part, and it is all volunteers. Robin's been doing this for 20 odd years now, and one or two other people are kind of chipping in to help out, but. So it's not an enormous amount of resources, but it's just enough to keep the trail alive. So the people and the trail itself out there, it's kind of at this critical part of kind of human history, right? Where for thousands of years people have been walking across the Himalayas, so those trails have been kind of maintained by the traffic. But just in the last few years, especially in Nepal, but this is the same in the Trans-Caucasian Trail as well. The older people still know that there used to be a trail before the road came. The younger people have never walked it, so they don't know where it is. And if we don't kind of go out there and hike these trails, they're going to disappear. And if anyone's done trail work, like the difference between brushing and, building a new trail where one didn't exist before is night or day. I mean, building a new trail in Nepal is not something that, the GHT is probably ever going to do in large format. Maybe we'll do some little bits here and there, but getting people out there and hiking is so important for so many different reasons. So yeah, come on, hike.
Exciting. I'll put all the links to the crowdfunding, the website, community, all that in the podcast description. I think this will go live early March, so the crowdfunding campaign will be up and running then, which is really cool. Go support. I'm going to hike the GHT at some point. I don't know when, but I'm going to do it. I've had it in my head for 3 or 4 years, ever since I first heard about it. And then talking to Jen got me really excited. And now just hearing about what you guys are doing and making it super accessible, I'm pumped. I'm really pumped. So appreciate all the work you guys are doing. And thanks for coming onto the podcast and sharing a bit about the GHT and what's happening.
Cam, thank you very much for the airtime, mate. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Life Outside Podcast, make sure to follow, give us a 5-star rating, all that good stuff. And like I said, all the links related to the Great Himalaya Trail will be in the podcast description. So go check it out. See you guys next week. Cheers.